and I'm otherwise known as the Village Coach. I'm a life coach supporting women, but specifically supporting mums. And the reason that I've kind of gone down that route is that I feel really strongly about this notion of this village that we were all promised when we had children. The well-known phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. And I really believe in that sort of sense of support community, and that child and the mother having lots of people in their lives that sort of nurture them through that journey. Um, I am a mum to three children myself, and one of the big driving factors in me sort of going down the coaching route was around them. And I think I had a sort of like classic scenario in terms of um, trying to juggle my sort of work life, the commute. We were living in London when I had my kids, first of all, my husband's schedule, like all of the other things that are thrown at you as a mum. And one of my big sort of changes was I wanted to be self-employed. I wanted to do work where I was working with other mums and supporting them, and make it work around my family. So that's kind of how I've got to this bit of the journey. I've been coaching for a few years now, just maybe 2 years. So I'm fairly like new to it all, but I'm fully immersed in the whole world of it. I love it. As you know, I've been
Yes.
the recipient of lots of coaching, and I think the holistic approach that you offer is exactly the sort of approach that I do with the mums that I work with, and I just love discovering all this community of women all kind of working towards the same values. So
Here, here. Oh, what a beautiful introduction. Yeah, I think our paths are so similar in that way, although different client groups, like, but there's so many similarities and crossovers. And I know, my one-to-one clients and also balance being community. I think Jess is here. Hi, Jess. Yeah, I think, self-care is such a big topic that we all would love to prioritize more, but do kind of struggle with it. So I think, we're in our conversation just going to break some things down. If anyone listening has got any questions, just fire them over. I can read them on the screen. I'll try and multitask, do a bit of both. But why don't we start with maybe like, what does self-care mean to you? Like, what is it?
it's funny because when you ask that question and when I hear the phrase self-care, I have a slightly weird reaction to it.
Mm.
And I think this is because I've talked about it and thought about it so much, perhaps, and particularly had lots of conversations with my clients around it. But I fully support self-care, and I fully support the notion of it, because when it comes down to it, it's we're caring for ourselves, and particularly for mums, like we care for our children. And the way that you give your time, your energy, your unconditional love, your patience, like all of the stuff that you give to your children, how amazing would it be if we could give that to ourselves? However, a big issue I feel with self-care is that for a lot of mums that I speak to, they feel that it's another thing to do. So it's another thing to put on the list. It's another kind of chore. And with that, feels like it's increasing the kind of mental load, but they also feel guilty. And I'd say this is the biggest thing that clients say to me when we talk about self-care. They're like, I feel bad because I'm not doing self-care. And I've been there, and I am there, in lots of ways still. So I feel like it's a bit of a double-edged sword in a way. In theory, it's a wonderful thing, something we all strive to be, but there's a tipping point where it suddenly becomes like the stick we beat ourselves.
Oh gosh. I mean, and we just don't need another stick, do we? There's so many.
Too many sticks.
Yeah, that's so interesting, actually, the way that you described it, and that you find that with your clients, because I find the same. Yeah, like the number of things that we want to achieve and want to do, and we find it so difficult to be still and not to be doing anything. And then self-care, it's almost like we need to do it perfectly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, it looks like this on Instagram, or it looks, people are kind of doing it this way. And actually, I don't know, like how would you kind of, like what could it mean to different people, I guess?
I think that's a really key point, because I think that the like sort of appearance of self-care and what we think it should look like. And that word should is probably
Mhm.
the most key word in that sentence. And I'm probably saying that because I'm a coach, and that's literally the one where it makes me kind of go, oh yeah, that's happening there. So a lot of clients say like, oh, I should be doing this because, I've seen this, as a healthy habit, whether it's, drinking 2 liters of water in the morning or, doing meditation every day, whatever it is. And all of the things that the clients kind of come up with around those shoulds feel quite extreme. It's like when
Mm.
you're looking at all or nothing thinking, it's the all approach. It's like I've got to work out every day for 20 minutes. Otherwise, like if I don't do it every day, then there's no point. If I don't kind of do these like really strict habits, and I think that's where it can all kind of fall down and feel very stressful and unattainable. So a lot of what I work with my clients on is we kind of try and forget about what self-care looks like. We begin with that because it's useful to like notice what does it mean to you, right? Like, and it looks so different to everyone.
Yeah.
But what we talk about is what does it achieve for you? So if your self-care was like, if you had a whole day where your self-care was at the like 100%, like gold standard of self-care, what would that day look like for you? And
Oh,
yeah,
golden
I know it's
question.
quite nice to think about that actually. Can we all just think
The
about that
dream.
for a moment? Yeah, exactly. But also, like, aside from what it might look like, how would it make you feel? Like, what would it
Mm,
give you? What would you be able to take away from that day? So that's often where I start with clients. It's the end goal, really. It's a kind of quite a basic structure of these conversations. It's like, where do you want to be and how do you want that to impact your life? So then when we're
mm,
focusing on those like feelings and the intentions behind it, what it actually looks like is kind of irrelevant. And I always say this to my clients, I'm like, I don't really care if your self-care is, working out in the gym every day or having a glass of wine, or like, I really don't care. What I do care is what's the intention behind it. So that's how we start to unpick it, I'd say.
yeah. Gosh, I really, really like that. When you were just talking, I could almost picture mine and how I'd feel
Yeah.
afterwards. And I think connecting the feelings to the behavior is just such a powerful way of, yeah, just implementing that desire to make it happen. I think when you can really connect to those feelings. And I was just thinking about this morning because in our kind of like practice run, I was just saying like I've had quite a self-caring morning,
Mm.
but actually when I think about it, all I did was go to the supermarket and buy some bits for the week, which is so ridiculous that felt like self-care. But
Mm.
I did it without being in a rush.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it just was nice, like pootering around the aisles, and
Mm.
which sounds bizarre. I know that's my level of self-care, but sometimes it's just about being a bit more mindful about what I'm doing. And that feels so powerful for me because
Yeah.
life is so busy and such a rush.
Mm.
I don't know if that's just my kind of take on it, but yeah, do you think kind of being mindful and self-care are connected?
Absolutely. And it's so interesting what you said there, Amber, about like going to the supermarket. And actually, I put out something on my Instagram recently about like what self-care is, what self-care isn't. And often I'll say to clients like something around, have you had some time for yourself recently, or can you give me an example? And pretty much every single time they will say something along the lines of, I went to the supermarket. I,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
Oh my
But
gosh, I
I
thought
find,
it was just
yeah, no, a supermarket alone time without a
yes,
child,
yes,
the dream.
yes.
Um, Driving in the car, probably on the way to pick up kids or having dropped them off, but having like 20 minutes to listen to like a podcast or the music that you like rather than your
Yeah.
kids' stuff. That's self-care, massive. Um, I mean, I definitely the other day had a moment where I just sat on my driveway before going into the house for about 2 minutes, and I was like, oh, this is really nice. And that is self-care, right? Like that is, and I don't, again, it's like there's no right or wrong way to do this, but it's like you said, why does that matter to you? And the bit that you said that I found really interesting was because I wasn't in a rush. And
Mm,
that's the telling bit. It's like, right, that's the feeling that you want to be. bringing intention and focus to. And that's the magic, where the magic happens, because what you can then do is say, okay, if that's like the key value for me, like today even, or this week or whatever, what else can I do to bring around that feeling of not being in a rush?
Yeah.
And that's when it starts to build out into other things, and maybe bigger things and more long-term things. But starting small is really important.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, it's a really interesting point to think about, actually. I think slowing down is, yeah, so key for me, for sure. A lovely message from Soraya, who
Oh, hi,
says, my
Soraya.
self-care, oh yeah, friend, my self-care currently looks like sitting in the car park outside Kindy, enjoying the stillness and listening to you. Love
Wonderful. Yeah.
it. Doesn't get better than that on a Monday morning. Oh, that's so nice.
Mm.
So what do you think of the barriers? What kind of things do you hear?
Hmm. That's, I'd say, probably the biggest area that I hear from my clients. I think number one hottest topic is the feeling of guilt. I
Mm,
think, and I know mum guilt again. It's a controversial phrase. I know that, because we don't talk about dad guilt, we don't talk about parent guilt. I personally think it's still an important topic to bring about, because it is a specific experience of mums with all the different factors that they're juggling.
mm,
Um, and so, yeah, a lot of mums will say to me, I should, again, be doing this with the kids. I feel guilty for taking that time to myself. Um, they also, then it kind of carries on in that when they do have an hour totally guilt-free, they don't know what to do. And
yes.
a lot of mums say, like, and I do it. I actually had it the other day. I had an hour to myself in the house with no one else in it, which is like, that is my self-care. It's my dream. I love it. I was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, there's a million things on your to-do list, obviously. And
Always.
also I'm like, oh, I could just, lie down for an hour or like read a magazine. Obviously that never happens. But it's that sort of paralysis, I think, of
Mm,
what, like, fills my cup and what brings me joy. And again, that is a massive area that I dig into in coaching, because a lot of women come to me and they kind of say, I don't really know what I love
yeah,
anymore.
I hear that
I don't
all the
know.
time.
Yeah, I don't. And we always like laugh with me and my friends. But like, what are your hobbies? Like, oh, folding the washing. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it is genuinely
Picking up
hard.
bloody
Yeah,
toys.
exactly. Because I think you've gone through such a huge transition entering motherhood, and then
Mm,
as your kids get older, it's the kind of load of like school admin or household or going back to work or whatever it is. Suddenly there's no space for you and your passions and your joys. So a
mm,
huge piece of work that I always do is around values, and I often say, let's start with that. And it's basically like a reset around finding the things that bring you joy, that fill your cup, that are your like non-negotiables. And it's not just having a nice list of nice things to do. It goes deeper than that, in that that becomes the compass point on which you can start to make decisions around your job, or big decisions, big life
mm.
decisions. If you're really
Yeah.
clear on what's really important to you, then that's going to feel like a much easier process. And I think values change hugely after becoming a mum. So that's, I think, a really key area to tackle, that sort of decision paralysis area.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, values in my work, when it comes down to kind of nutrition and lifestyle, the way that we want to live our lives. And I think the women that I work with, kind of over 40, in terms of identity, it's almost like they're
Mm,
trying to hold on to an identity that they had previously, that, that might be around drinking, or, the way that they exercise or who they socialize with. And actually, that identity has never had a chance to kind of evolve. They've never had a chance to discover what it's like now. And doing that work to get them to kind of, yeah, just process all of that change and
mm,
all of the transitions that they've been through is
mm,
so powerful. I think the result of that can be really eye-opening.
mm,
And like you said, help with these massive life
mm.
decisions.
I think it also has real ripple effects around other massive areas like self-esteem and confidence,
Mm,
because a lot of women, like you said, it's real mirrored sort of scenarios with my clients, like sort of pre being a mum and post being a mum, like what they used to do for fun, to relax, to have like whatever. It's so different now that they're sort of grasping for stuff that doesn't, it can't work now and it's not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that like values work and really digging down, you're also really celebrating that individual and saying like this is important to you because it is like, and that's so incredible.
Yeah.
And again, that's a good way of really trying to quieten those voices of like, well, so and so on, you know, Instagram's doing this and I'm not, because you become more confident and have more conviction in the stuff that you love and you're good at and brings you joy and works for you and your family. And so that the other stuff doesn't matter so much. You're not
Mhm.
trying to like, the grass isn't always greener anymore. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really
Yeah.
key.
Yeah. And Instagram is not real, right? Or shows
Exactly.
a very small part of the picture. So don't be
True.
fooled.
Mm.
But Helly, we're all dying to know what you did with your hour. What did you do?
Do you know what? I am getting better. So I often, when I'm having those moments of like complete frazzle, I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do, and there's like the list is whirring. I just take myself outside of my house because I personally find it quite hard. I work from home. I have three kids. We're doing a house renovation. Like a lot of my life is at home at the moment, and it's full on from the minute we
Yeah.
wake up to the minute everyone goes to sleep. So if I can just take myself out of the environment, so I just actually went to the garden, had a cup of tea, with no phone, nothing, and I just sat there for like 5 minutes and was like, okay, let's just have a cup of tea and then we'll decide what happens after. For me, that's meditation.
Mm.
I do
Well,
love breath work
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like that, but for me, it's intentionally having a pause.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just going to sit for 5 minutes, and then after that 5 minutes, if everything still feels as important and urgent, okay, then we can like attend to that. But actually, naturally it didn't, and I did a few jobs, but I did also spend a bit of time just sat in my garden like just chilling. So
Yeah. Lovely.
mm,
That reminds me of a client that I worked with in the past, and we kind of decided that that was going to be the thing, to drink a morning cup of tea without any distractions. So like it was literally, without phone, just looking out the window.
mm,
She found it so difficult, so
mm,
hard
yeah,
to just pause for that kind of, it was 2 or 3 minutes, it was not even five. And I think we are just so out of tune with being able to just sit in quiet,
exactly.
without
Mm,
our phones. I think our phones are such a big thing. Actually, you've mentioned, just being without that for a minute is so
mm,
frightening to be in
mm,
your own company doing
mm.
nothing.
Yeah,
What do you think about that? I don't know, it's such a
I
big topic, but yeah,
it
why are we
it
in this
really,
position?
yeah, it really really resonates. And I on the sort of phone and digital distraction and life admin side of things, I find that is a constant battle personally for me to sort of manage, but also a constant topic that comes up with my clients a lot,
Mm,
particularly actually clients who've got slightly older children, particularly kids at school. In my two eldest are now at school, and the wave, the tidal wave of admin that I've dealt with over the past like 2 weeks, it is overwhelming. And we do live in a world now where things are just set up in that way. And that's quite hard,
yeah,
I think. And I think also as parents, we're trying to respond to that and like process it and manage it and make sure that, our kids have got their PE kit on the right day and all of that, whilst also making our own decisions around things like our own phone use and all of that stuff.
yeah,
And then you're trying to communicate that to your children. Like it's very
it
complicated and
is.
it's a whole other layer of admin and stuff to think about that I don't think the previous generation had to deal with.
Yeah,
Um, so yes, first of all, I think it's really complicated. I don't think there's a right or wrong. But second of all, on the topic of kind of just sitting with stuff which feels really difficult and really uncomfortable, I also had a previous client actually who wasn't so much with like a phone sort of thing, but she could not sit down in her own house. She just couldn't do it. She was like, I would sit there and think, I've got to like, clean that thing, put the washing on, straighten
yeah,
that, like she just couldn't do it. And it took many, many weeks, I'd say, to really drill down as to why that was happening. and lots of stuff came uncovered about sort of expectation and her own kind of narrative in her head, which is basically saying like you have to be productive, otherwise you're wasting time, you're being lazy. She'd also gone from being a pretty like high like super busy senior person in the corporate world to being at home with two small children. And I think in her head, she was trying to rationalize her previous life before motherhood of like, you know, being in
Absolutely.
the office every day and all of this. Now she was at home, she was like, I feel like I'm not achieving
Yeah,
anything. So
it's
we looked a lot about like, what does like productiveness look like for you now? And why is it so important to you? And what could it look like? Like, where are the options? Again, it's not all or nothing. I always love to talk about with my clients what's in the messy middle.
yeah,
Like it's yeah,
the
what's
messy
so
middle.
it's
We
great.
love
There's
the messy
so much
middle.
in there. Exactly, but we always miss it out because we either want like 100% gold standard or nothing.
Yeah,
And it's like, let's try all these bits in the middle. Some will work, some won't, some will be rubbish,
yeah,
some will be great. Let's just try it.
yeah,
So that was a good thing for her, I think, just to kind of like commit to trying a few things and being curious, even if it felt a bit difficult.
yeah. I love that. Yeah. And it's
Mm,
so like we're so similar in that way, the way that we coach, you know, kind of, yeah, just getting people to explore,
mm,
to try, because it just doesn't, you know, the same thing will not work for everybody. We cannot just be the ones that kind of dictate this is the way that you should eat, this is the way that you should do self-care, this is the way that you should live. You know, because I just think it comes down to so many other factors, you
mm,
know, to preferences, to choice, to lifestyle, to busyness, to kids, to whatever else is going on in life.
mm.
There are so many factors to consider. So, yeah, I just love that. And the messy middle. There was just a message here I wanted to have a little look at um, from John Corberry. I'm not sure what your
I
name
love
is,
this
but
intro. Hi, Joe.
hello. Joe?
Joe,
Yeah?
yeah.
Joe, cool. Hey, Joe. I had the same feeling of not knowing what to do yesterday. I just went to bed and fell asleep immediately. Sometimes the absolute basic needs have to be met, and I often overlook them. Yeah, what a great point. It's so true. We're bloody exhausted, right? And we're still trying to
Absolutely.
do things. We're
Mm,
still trying to be productive and power through. And actually, the very thing is if we did go and just put ourselves in a comfortable position, we might
mm,
actually
mm,
be able to have a rest
mm.
or switch off. I think that's so scary to think that we'd actually do that and
Mm.
waste
I
time.
know. On that topic as well, just really quickly on rest, because I personally have always struggled with that because actually I've never been a napper. I have many friends
Mm,
who are nappers. They love a nap and it's like a superpower. They literally just go into a room and like I've just been like ever since I was a child, I've not
yeah,
ever been like go 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 go.
same.
I think it's ultimate FOMO basically. I just can't miss out on anything. Since being a
Yeah,
mum and actually when heavily pregnant, I did nap a bit, but now I would say I'm not so great at it anymore. And so again, I was like, well, if I can't nap, then what's the point? I can't do anything. And I remember having young babies, like newborns, and everyone, you know, the whole sleep when the baby
mm,
sleeps. And it's like, are you joking?
I
Like, there is no
can't.
way I could relax enough. So again, a real thing that I get into with my clients a lot is different types of rest. And it's really simple, but I mean, there is actually a lot of research around this,
Yeah,
which I'm not an expert on, but I think it's like the seven types of
yeah,
rest, and some of it's about like digital rest, obviously sleep in itself, but there's loads of different types, and
yeah,
that's what I really encourage my clients, like find your rest.
yeah,
What does that look like for you? And actually, on some days, that could be movement, that could
yeah,
be like going for a walk or a swim or yoga or whatever, but it also might just be kind of that pause, having a cup of tea in the garden for 5 minutes.
yeah. It
And for
looks so different. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think again, don't like just assume if you can't do it one way, it can't be achieved in another way.
for
That's something that
sure.
I've really benefited from learning, I'd say.
Yeah, such a great point. And that's why things like walking and yoga and swimming, cycling gently, are known as, you know, not some crazy hill sprints, are known as active rest because
Yeah.
it's actively resting,
Yeah.
and just getting the blood flow that we need, you know. And this is really relevant for my women in perimenopause, where sleep is just so difficult, and you know, it's really broken, and the more kind of pressure you put on it, sometimes we just go into more of that freeze state, and it's really anxiety provoking. So, you know, we do things like yoga nidra, or just lying, and there's a really brilliant one on Balance Being Community that they've got access to. And, you know, I think people just benefit so much from the different forms of rest, like you mentioned. Yeah, whether it's that one day and then something else the next, but all of these different kind of strategies and methods. But I think, yeah, just always coming back to how it all feels, and you know what it brings to people's lives. That point I just think is so powerful. So lots of people are joining us today. Hello, everybody. So nice to see so many names popping up. But yeah, what else can I ask you? What about any like big myths that you hear? Any big myths that you hear about self-care? And yeah, I don't know, misconceptions, anything like that? I
Yeah.
guess you've mentioned a few already.
I think that whole, yeah, I think there's a lot of myths around self-care actually. And when I did a workshop called Self-Care Isn't Selfish actually a few months ago, and I asked my kind of Instagram community and the women on the workshop about what self-care means to them. And actually that was quite a neutral question, but most of them came back with it is well, it's commoditized, so it feels very, commercial. It's about buying stuff
Mhm.
and buying into things. That was like a real overriding theme actually. And also that it's just completely it sort of like misunderstands the experience of motherhood. Like, how can self-care be a part of that? Like, with everything that we've got to think about. So I think a lot of people just felt it really like missed the mark, and felt like, had that reaction, that kind of slightly like, oh, this is actually annoying. Like, I don't want to be trying to like justify why
Mm.
I'm not doing this. So I think I certainly would say on the commercial aspect of self-care, it absolutely is there. I mean, it's everywhere, and I think that when we are feeling particularly probably low on self-care, actually, ironically, but
Yeah.
when you're very tired, when you're like really busy, perhaps when you've got a newborn and you're not sleeping, you will go to those places more as a quick fix, as we all do. It's natural human behavior, isn't it? Like, oh, I just need to, the Amazon Prime things that you
Oh
buy
my
at 3 in the morning when your
goodness.
baby won't sleep. I mean, yeah, we all do it. It's normal.
How
Like,
did you
if we care,
know? How did you know?
exactly, exactly. So, it's natural to go there, but I think again, it's about like acknowledging, yeah, that is there, and actually that might be a useful tool occasionally, but there's also a lot of other ways that we can do it that start from you. It's starting with that intention behind it. What's the goal and the feeling? And a big thing that I always talk about with my clients is what is your belief behind it? Like, how could we go from saying, I don't deserve this, to I 100% deserve this? I mean, I know that's quite like black and white, but how can we move ourselves one step closer to
Yeah,
that feeling?
exactly. Just a little bit up the scale would be good, wouldn't it? From 0 to
Yeah,
10
yeah,
even, or yeah, kind of shifting up there for sure, because I think that deserving feeling is such a big one, and because we'd just rather give that to our children or work, or whatever else it is that we prioritize in our lives. And I think, yeah, just shifting that narrative and realizing that without it, we are so empty.
yeah.
Like when we haven't kind of had that time with our partner, or had that time just kind of like reducing the load that we put on ourselves, then we are so snappy when we see the people that we love. We have no capacity to do that little extra bit, or to just be ourselves, the person that we really, you know, want to be or show up
Mm,
as in life. And I think this is what we're talking about, is that it gives you the capacity back to
mm,
be that person that
mm. Mm.
that you want to be, not that anybody else wants you to be, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of about prevention, but rather than cure. And I always kind of say,
Mm.
like, the reason why I'm so hot on this topic actually is because, you know, there was a time where I was not attending to my self-care at all, and actually it really impacted me physically, like health-wise. And I'm so kind of on it now because I kind of have to be, like with my health, my physical health, but also mental health.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it as well, like from my specific kind of method that I talk about with my clients, is obviously around this kind of village aspect of it. And I say, once you've got that self-belief and you've figured out what that self-care looks like for you and why it's important, you now need to figure out how you can communicate that. And that is often the hardest bit, I think.
Yes.
It's like it's taking action, isn't it? So it's about, having a conversation perhaps with your partner around sharing the domestic load, or, perhaps having a lie-in at the weekend because you need to catch up on your sleep or whatever it is. Or it might be about having a conversation with your boss or your manager to kind of figure out your hours because maybe it's just too much at the moment to kind of juggle it all. It could also actually be having a conversation with yourself and giving yourself a bit of a pep talk. But I do really strongly believe in that bit of the process. It's like you've got to, and that's the difficult bit. That's the bit which feels
Yeah.
uncomfortable. That's stepping
Yeah.
out of your comfort zone. That's where the change can
Yeah.
happen. So I always like to try and like nurture people along to that bit and say, that's the big step, really.
Gosh, powerful stuff. This is amazing. Helly, I could literally talk to you all day long. I
So,
love your company. I think you're so wonderful, but I am aware of time.
sure.
So we'll wrap it up with one final question.
Hmm.
And that is, if there's one thing that women that are listening to this could implement or action today to kind of help themselves with all of the barriers that they have around self-care, what might those things be, or what might that thing be?
So I'm actually going to pose a question for that to all the women, because I'm a coach, so kind of what I do. So I think a really good question to ask yourselves today is, what is the smallest thing I can do today that will have the biggest impact around my self-care? And I'm talking like a 5 or 10 minute task.
Love
So
it.
a little mini challenge to see where you get to. And then after you've done it, just note down how you feel.
Oh my gosh, that's a good one. Right, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to write to you, and I'm going to let you know.
I should do it too, actually, shouldn't
Yeah,
I?
definitely. And anyone else that does do it at home, please get in touch with us. We'd
Yeah,
love to
let us
hear.
know.
We'd love to hear more from you. Helly, thank you so much. It's been amazing speaking to you. Hopefully you're going to come and do a session with us on Balance Being Community, which would be amazing.
Yeah, that'd
Love
be
to have
great.
you. And there we go. We're getting some lovely comments there. Thanks, Holes. Great tip, Helly. So yes, lovely to see your smiley face this Monday morning, and I'll see you very
Yeah.
soon.
Thank you so much, lovely.
Take care. Thank
Bye,
you. Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.